All right. Hello there, friends. It is Jimmie Maverick. It is time for the Fantasy Frenzy podcast. And I got my good friend, Swami Rob, on the phone. Swami, say hi.
Hey, what's happening?
All right. You sound good. I can hear you clear, loud and clear. So we're going to talk about the disaster that was Week 16. Why don't you tell me about what happened in your championship game?
Oh, man, I don't want to talk about it. Let's be honest. It was horrible, man. I had, let's see. All right, well, first of all, the girl that was playing me in my league, I happen to know on good authority, her boyfriend manages her team for her. So that's offense number one.
Oh,
okay?
man. Right.
So, yeah, and she thinks I'm not wise to it, but I'm wise to it. Allie, I see you, okay? But anyway, so I went into Monday night's game up by 39 points.
Okay.
And my team did okay. I had Kenyon Drake in the flex. He blew up. I got a great week out of Alvin Kamara. But the Bills defense was not good.
Right.
My kicker, Jake Elliott, was not good. Nick Chubb, stiff, and
Right.
he's been reliable all year long. Russell Wilson, really pedestrian outing. As a matter of fact, Garoppolo was my backup, had 20 points on the bench, and I thought, well, Russell Wilson will get that, and he got me exactly 20. So either way, I would have been screwed. And then I had, let's see, DK Metcalf got me absolutely no points. And I did have Drake at the flex. He did well. My other receiver, I'm trying to think of who my other receiver was.
Did you start Thielen or
No, Galladay. I started Galladay, and Galladay did okay.
Okay.
He did better than Thielen did, and he did better than Will Fuller did, which were my options. And I had Rudolph at tight end. Now, I'm up by 39 points, but she's still got Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, and Devontae Adams left to play.
Yes.
And I had Kyle Rudolph left to play, and I kind of had a hope that, the Vikings defense is at home pretty stout. Maybe we can hold that trio under 40 points. I had my doubts, but I thought it's possible. And by halftime, it was over. I turned the game off, and that was it. I ended up losing 180 to 132.
Oh, man. I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, I mean, being up only by 39, though, with Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams still to play, that was a long shot anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I really thought, DK Metcalf and Russell Wilson have been a really good combo for me this year, believe it or not.
Right.
Because, I had both Fuller and Thielen when the season began. I felt pretty good about that. But as both their hammies got pulled, I went to the waivers to get Galladay, to get Metcalf. I'd actually scored pretty good on the waiver wire all year long, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And so this team had actually been pretty formidable up till week 17. And, 130 points ain't going to get it. So there it is. I lose.
Oh, man, I got to tell you, I had a playoff game, right, because we go to the Week 17 championship game in one league, and the day started out really, really good because I started the Indianapolis defense, scored 30 points against Carolina.
Nice.
I had Mark Andrews, who scored over 20 points. I was feeling really good. I had this huge projected lead over the opponent. And then the afternoon game started, and the team just went to crap. I had – my quarterback was Dak Prescott, and then I had DJ Moore and Christian Kirk as my wide receivers. Those guys all together scored like 12 points. And so it came down to the Monday night game, and I decided that I was going to start Mike Boone, who is the backup running back, because both Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison were out. So I figured this is going to be a good game for him. They're at home. It's a pretty easy run defense. So I started him up instead of Kenyon Drake, and because of that, I lost. And so that was just very disappointing. I shouldn't have benched Drake because I would have won it. I started him, but that's the breaks. That's what happens, man. It was a bad tactical decision on my part.
Well, you know what, man? The thing with Kenyon Drake is when he got traded to Arizona, I remember how long ago that was. And I'd been starting Sony Michel at my flex most of the year.
Right.
And I saw Drake went to Arizona. I knew David Johnson wasn't doing jack. And I said, maybe there's a chance he's sitting there. And I went to waivers, and there he was. And so I grabbed him right away. And he was a great pickup for me, man.
He did. Obviously. Yeah, he had some. I mean, he had that one blow up week, it was like the first week in there, which is crazy. That usually doesn't happen when a player switches teams mid-season. But I got to say, very good prospects for Drake going forward. I've heard rumors that DJ is going to get traded, and Drake's going to be the main guy down there. He certainly seems to have the skill set that Cliff Queensberry, that's the quote coach, right? That Queensberry wants to use there. And so I think that bodes well for next year. And I think you're probably going to be able to get someone like Drake in the 3rd or 4th round. I think he's going to be a great target in next year's draft. But it's impressive what he was able to do.
And I've also he's a 1-year wonder.
Right, and I've also heard a rumor that DJ is going to get traded to Tampa Bay, which is Bruce Arians' team, and will finally be a running back that Arians can trust and utilize. And so I think that's good for DJ too. So we'll see. We'll see what happens during free agency. But both those things seem like a likely possibility that Drake will get signed to an extension and DJ will get released. And hopefully DJ lands on his feet as well, because it's disappointing to see what happened to him this past year.
I can't wait to watch the NFC West next year, because I really think Arizona's got a ton of upside. And on top of that, I don't see the Rams staying down too long. I think they'll make a couple of tweaks and still be very competitive. Seattle's going to be really good. Pete Carroll's such a good coach. And the 49ers are good for years to come. That division next year is going to be a thing to watch, man.
It's going to be, yes, that's going to be the best division in football for sure. Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
So we've got the Week 17 games coming up, Week 17 championships. And let me just say to all the people out there, I'm sorry if you have to play in a Week 17 game, because it is just a total minefield. And you basically can't trust any playoff team right now, with probably the exception of the Eagles and the Cowboys for this weekend. You just can't trust them. You know that if they get any sort of lead, they're going to rest their starters, or they're just even not going to play their starters. Like Baltimore's already declared that Ingram and Jackson and Mark Andrews are probably not going to play. None of them are going to play this weekend. So if you happen to have those players on your team, well, forget it. You gotta bench them. And I've got a team now. I'm playing in the 3rd place game, right? So because I lost last week. But here's who I'm starting this week. I'm starting Drew Lock instead of Dak Prescott. And I've got Greg Ward, Terrell Williams, and Steve Sims of Washington as my wide receivers. I'm putting in Caden Smith of the Giants as my tight end. It's pathetic. It's like the worst. And I can't believe I'm starting these guys, but it's just because, I can't trust Mark Andrews this weekend, even if they say he might play. I can't trust that at all. And DJ Moore is injured now, so he's out. And Christian Kirk, I can't trust him either. I took him out too. But, Dak Prescott, he probably will play, but, he looked bad last week. So I don't trust him either. But, this is part of what happens when you're playing Week 17.
Well, I got to go back years now, but I played in the league. This is at least 7 or 8 years ago. And I was playing in a league that had a pretty dominant team. And there was some big money on the line for the championship game, and it was a Week 17 championship game. And Michael Turner was my running back, who'd been great all year long for the Falcons. And so I'm watching the Week 17 game, and if I'm not mistaken, the Falcons were playing on a Monday night that week, and I needed 20 points to win the game. And Turner got me 18 by halftime, and I said, "Oh, it's a done deal." And they rested him for the second half, and I sat there just fuming. I couldn't believe it. They came out, they took the field for the second half, and there's some running back in the backfield I'd never heard of. What happened to Turner? And the announcers came on and said, "Yeah, they're going to rest him for the playoffs." Man, I melted down. It was horrible, man.
So if you happen to be in those Week 17s, listeners, and those Week 17 championship games, go to your league manager and tell him to make it a Week 16 championship next year. It's just better all around. And you actually get to play the players that got you there in the first place. So that's my advice to you guys.
If your commissioner has a Week 17 championship set up, he should not be the commissioner. You should impeach him immediately.
You got to find another league, right? You got to get out of that league. Don't even bother with it.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't get it. I've got this other league I did, this ESPN league, did this weird thing where the season ended on Week 13, and then the playoffs are 2-week batches. There was the semifinal was the sum of your points for week 14 and 15, and then the championship is the sum of your points for week 16 and 17. That's just crazy. It's just stupid. I'm just I don't know why they set it up that way, and I didn't want it to be on ESPN anyway, but it was. But whatever, right?
I did that kind of league 2 years ago, another big money league, and I thought I had lost after week 16 because I was behind quite a bit, so I just assumed I'd lost. But it turned out it was a 2-week final, and I ended up winning. And I didn't even know what the hell was going on until the commissioner called me and said, "Hey, you won." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Yeah, I didn't even know this was a plan. It's your point totals from the last 2 weeks." And I was like, "Oh, wow." And I ended up winning the whole league. And so that actually worked out pretty good for me.
That's pretty sweet, man.
I know. Yeah. So this will be the first year in 6 or 7 years now, if I'm not mistaken, maybe even 8, that I didn't get first place in one league or another, man. It's kind of disappointing. Second's okay. But, I like first a lot better.
I feel like I'm spoiled because I'm all disappointed in myself because I only won one league this year, but it was a high stakes league. I made a big payout on it, and so I'm happy with that. It's a little disappointing what happened on some of my other leagues because some of the teams were really good. It's just had a poor week 14, whatever, and it wiped me out of a couple leagues where the team should have gone deeper into the playoffs. But that's fantasy, man. But I got to say, man, as far as what I learned this season in fantasy football is that if there's a player on my draft list who I really, really like, I got to be a lot more aggressive about going after my number one pick as opposed to the number 2 pick. I missed, like one of my examples is the New England Patriots were my number 1 pick for a defense this year, but I had my backups. I had like Buffalo as a backup if I missed. And so I ended up with Buffalo on a bunch of teams. And Buffalo was a really good defense this year, but
until I needed them the most.
Give me the advantage that I would have had I gotten New England on my teams instead, And same thing with Lamar Jackson. He was another guy I was really, really big on. I really liked him. I only ended up getting him in one of my leagues, and I traded for him in another league. So I had him in 2 of my leagues this year. But shoot, man, there's couple of my leagues where it's like I would have destroyed the league had I had Lamar Jackson in there instead of, say, Dak Prescott. Even though Prescott had a good season, he did really, really good. He didn't do what my number 1 pick did. So, that's like my big takeaway this season, man, is I got to go when I identify a player who I see this guy is like primed to go, I got to get him. Austin Eckler's another one, man. Geez, Austin Hooper, who had a fantastic first half of his season. These are all guys that were all like high on my radar, and yet I hardly got any shares of them during the drafts.
Well, as far as what I learned this year, I figured out that I've always been the kind of guy who, when my draft is over, I look at my team and I think, man, that's a pretty half-assed team. But I'm notorious for raiding the waiver wire all the time. Matter of fact, I looked at my total roster moves, dropping people, picking people up on the team that I was in second with. I had 45 some moves this year, by far the most in the league. I ended up in second with it. So, it wasn't unusual for me in the past to look at the team I drafted and just think, yeah, this team's half-assed. This team sucks, and just kind of leave it laying there and just give up, But I've found, man, that waiver wire, I've been smart with that. And that's what's really gotten me to the championship game all these years, man.
Yeah, man, never stop improving your team. I've been able to pick up great players off the waiver. Like when you said you got Galladay off waivers. You got
Kenyon Drake.
Kenyon Drake off waivers. Man, those are fantastic pickups. And those kind of players always appear during the course of the season, and they all have their moments. Like Tevin Coleman was someone I was able to pick up off of waivers, and he had a couple of huge weeks right after I got him. Will Lutz, the kicker for New Orleans, fantastic kicker. I just picked him up off of waivers because he was on bye, and whoever had him dropped him. And so you got to utilize the waivers, and I'm constantly trading during the season, just working on improving my players and dropping off the guys that aren't doing what I need them to do, and it generally works out very well. Yeah, I'm very active as well.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm famous in all my leagues for not being a guy you want to negotiate with when it comes to trades, because I think people People really think I have dipshit written on my forehead or something, but they offer these trades. I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Right.
You think I'm going to make that trade? But I let some guys go early in the season because I could just I had a feel. And I thought to myself, this guy's going to continue to suck all year long. Brandon Cooks, a perfect example. I drafted him, and I thought all the Rams receivers were money last year, but
right.
it became apparent real early they weren't going to be this year unless you get Cooper Kupp.
Right.
And I cut him. And I watched 3 or 4 people jump on him, and he was back on the waiver wire a week later because they realized he sucked. He was not a good person to have,
Yeah, again, I mean, and it was a tough year for receivers, especially those top tier receivers, man. Just a terrible year for them. I have a feeling that next year we're gonna see some nice discounts on some of these players, and they're going to bounce back strongly in 2020. It was just a rough year with injuries to quarterbacks and then injuries to these elite wide receiver players that just kept them off the field for weeks at a time, like Juju Smith-Schuster and Brandon Cooks, man. Just never being able to stay healthy. So, but it should be better for next year. Just like, last year was a bad season for tight ends. There was only like 3 tight ends that did anything. This year you had 6 or 7 tight ends that were pretty good overall, during the most of the course of the year. That's an improvement. I expect the same thing to happen with the wide receivers next year for sure.
Well, with tight ends on this team that I ended up coming in second with, I talk about them like they're a championship team. They're not, but I started with Njoku. He gets hurt. I went to Will Dissly. He did great for me for about 3 weeks. He got hurt. Mm-hmm. I switched to somebody else for a couple of weeks that did okay and got hurt. Ended up with Kyle Rudolph, who did okay a few times, kind of stiffed me there at the end. But that was 4 different tight ends I was rotating in and out of there, and all of them – had pretty significant weeks, probably won me some games for the couple weeks I had them.
Right. And you always see like these players that they get up for like 2 or 3 games in a row, and you think, oh, this is it. These guys are going to win me my league. And then they fall right back to nothing after that. I don't know what happens, where all of a sudden they're a huge part of the game plan for 3 weeks and then they disappear again.
Well, I'll tell you though, now that the fantasy season's over for most people, you got this fantasy challenge going on.
Right.
Does that start the week after next?
Yeah, it starts wild card weekend. So it's
Let's
not this weekend, it's next weekend.
Because they're get in on it. Tell everybody about this, because I think I'm going to get in on this.
Yeah, you definitely do, because I think next week we'll have a little strategy talk. We'll talk about, the playoff teams and who we like and how to play this thing and how to win the challenge. So you just need to Google NFL Playoff Challenge. And it's basically fantasy football for the NFL playoffs. So it's for the 3 weeks of the playoffs and the Super Bowl. It's a standard points league. You got to roster a quarterback, 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, a tight end, a kicker, and a defense. And it's basically a race to the finish. So you just got to score as many points as you can over those 4 weeks. And one of the cool things about it is if you start the same player on multiple weeks, you get bonuses on those weeks. So if you start a player for 2 weeks in a row, on the second week, he'll earn 2 times points. If you start him for 3 weeks in a row, he gets 3 times points. And if you start him all 4 weeks in the Super Bowl, he'll get you 4 times points. So,
all right. So let me get this straight.
Okay.
If I draft Lamar Jackson, okay.
Yes.
And obviously Baltimore's got a first round bye.
Right.
He's not getting me any points that first week.
0 points week 1.
Moving forward. Okay. But then every week moving forward, you're getting double, triple, quadruple points for what he does.
That's right. That's exactly right. Okay. So you can start players on bye. You can make them in the first week. You can start players on bye. And again, when those players make it to, if they make it to the Super Bowl, man, they're going to be sitting there with quad points for your team. So yeah, Lamar Jackson.
And what I like about that is that you also got to be kind of a prognosticator too, because you got to figure out who's still going to be standing at the end, in addition to starting decent rosters. So that's all right.
That's right. And so when you go to NFL.com, who's doing this thing, right? So you got to create an account. It's a free account, but then search for Fantasy Frenzy for groups, and then join that group. That's our group. All right. And so that's all you need to do. It's free. There's no entry fee, and we're going to play for a $100 Amazon gift card going to the player that scores the most points. So definitely, players, if you're going to be missing fantasy football now, it's the way to keep it going for another month. We should have fun. And next week, we're going to talk all about the playoff teams, strategy, players, and all that stuff. So we'll have a better idea of the layout too, and the seedings for the playoff games. So
all right, really cool, man. Really cool.
All right.
I'll get in on that too, man. Yeah, I'll get signed up, and then next week we'll talk about that.
Sounds good. So great.
Right.
Well, thank you everybody for listening this season. We really appreciate it. We're going to keep it going during the off season. Swami may become more sporadic, but we're going to be talking, obviously there's all sorts of stuff that happened as far as free agency, the NFL draft. You got preseason, you got all this stuff happening. I'm going to be doing all sorts of analysis and keeping you up to date as to what's going on. And we're gonna go into 2020. We're gonna kick butt for 2020 fantasy football. That's for sure.
All right, sounds good, man.
All right. So thank you very much, Swami, for joining me today. And everybody, I hope you all had a Merry Christmas. Have a great New Year's, and we'll talk to you next week.